Rhaenyra 1. 106 AC. Rhaenyra Pav. The air, even through the thick furs, was a brutal, unrelenting cold, a stark contrast to the humid warmth of King's Landing. For 2 weeks, the ship had been my world, a rocking prison of creaking timbers and the ceaseless roar of the sea. Alinda Massey and Cerisa Blackwood, huddled beside me, looked as weary and chilled as I felt. Even the 50 royal guards, including Sir Auric and Sir Eric Cargill, seemed to shrink within their cloaks, their armor doing little against the biting wind. Then, a shout from the lookout, a voice cutting through the mist and spray. Land ho! White Harbor! I pushed myself up onto the deck, bracing against the icy wind. And there it was. White Harbor. It was vast, far larger than any southern city I'd imagined, its stout stone walls rising from the water, a forest of masts filling the busy harbor. As our galley eased its way towards the quay, the sounds of the city washed over me. Gulls crying, ropes groaning, dock hands shouting. A group of Northmen stood waiting, their forms sturdy, their faces unreadable. At their head was a man of considerable girth, dressed in rich, sea-green velvets. This must be Lord Willis Manderley, the shield of the White Knife. The gangplank lowered, and a jarring thud against the stone. Stepping onto northern soil, the cold bit instantly, sharp and invigorating. Lord Willis bowed low, a surprisingly deep, respectful incline for a man of his size. Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, his voice was warm, a deep rumble. Welcome to White Harbor. Welcome to Asgard. He then presented a small, wooden platter, a loaf of bread and a mound of salt. We offer you bread and salt, princess, that you may taste the bounty of our lands and be assured of our protection and hospitality, under the ancient laws of guest right. Guest right, of course. I took a piece of bread, dipped it in the salt, and brought it to my lips. It was coarse, plain. Alinda and Cerisa followed suit, as did the Cargill twins, their faces impassive. Thank you, Lord Manderley, I replied, my voice steady, though I could feel the cold seeping into my bones. Your hospitality is most appreciated. It has been a long journey. Indeed, princess, Lord Willis said, a genuine, friendly smile on his face. You and your companions will rest here in the new castle tonight. We'll see to a proper breaking of the fast before your journey inland tomorrow. He gestured towards a waiting carriage, a surprisingly elegant vehicle. This, princess, is White Harbor. It is the largest city in all of Asgard. The gateway to the north, where the White Knife meets the sea, and where our trade flows out to all corners of the world. It is the heart of our commerce and a testament to the strength we have found in our newfound independence. The carriage ride through the city was surprisingly smooth. We made our way through the city. The city was massive, not just its size, but it is also in remarkable order. The roads radiating from the docks were wide, clean, and incredibly smooth, paved with what looked like polished black stone, entirely unlike the muddy, rutted tracks of King's Landing. Every house, even those closest to the docks, was well built, constructed of sturdy stone with smoking chimneys and glinting glass windows. Small, neat gardens bloomed with hardy winter flowers, even in this biting cold. This wasn't merely a port city, it was a flourishing, meticulously managed city. The concrete roads truly were a marvel, the wheels gliding over them with barely a bump. We passed thriving markets, busy guilds, and more of those well-built, neat homes. This was a city that worked, that had invested in itself. It was almost jarringly advanced compared to the chaos of King's Landing streets. Soon, we arrived at the new castle, a grand, impressive fortress rising from the harbor. As we stepped inside, the chill left me, replaced by the warmth of roaring hearths and the scent of wood smoke and roasted meat. Lord Willis led us into a spacious hall. Princess, he announced, gesturing to a young woman and a stern-looking man standing beside him, allow me to present my family. This is my son, Sir Willis Manderley, and my daughter, Lady Willa Manderley. Willa, if you would be so kind as to show the princess and her companions to their chambers. They must be weary from their voyage. Lady Willa, a strong-faced girl with kind eyes, curtsied. Of course, father. This way, princess. I nodded, grateful for the respite. My journey into Asgard, into this strange, advanced north, had truly begun. Lady Willa Manderley led us through surprisingly grand corridors to our assigned rooms, well appointed and warm. The windows, unlike the small, leaded panes I was accustomed to in King's Landing, were large sheets of clear glass, letting in an abundance of soft, gray light. She showed us the chambers, explained the simple workings of the taps for running water, another unexpected marvel, and then, with a curtsy, took her leave, promising to send a maid when it was time for the feast. It was still only 5 in the evening, the day long in these northern climes. Once she was gone, Alinda and Cerisa immediately began chattering about the city. Did you see those roads, princess? Alinda exclaimed, her eyes wide. So smooth. I've never ridden in a carriage so comfortably in King's Landing. And the houses, Sarisa added, peering out the window. So neat, so orderly. Even the common folk seem to live better than most of the small folk in the capital. My attention, however, was drawn to a peculiar object hanging near the ceiling. It was a clear glass sphere, about the size of a fist, connected to a curious, stretchy cord that snaked down the wall. What is this? I asked, pointing. Alinda and Sarisa looked at it, puzzled. Perhaps a new kind of oil lamp. Alinda ventured, though it had no wick. Or some sort of decorative bauble. Sarisa suggested. We poked at it, prodded it, but could make no sense of its purpose. After a while, we gave up and began preparing for the evening feast, laying out our finest gowns. As we were in the midst of dressing, the room was suddenly, startlingly, filled with light. The glass bulb by the ceiling had begun to shine, emitting a steady, brilliant glow. We all stared, astonished. Gods! Sarisa gasped, reaching out a hesitant finger. She touched it, then yelped, snatching her hand back. It's hot. Alinda, ever curious, touched it next, cautiously at first, then pulled away with a similar exclamation. She's right, princess. It burns. Then it was my turn. I reached out, my curiosity outweighing my apprehension. My fingers closed around the warm, smooth glass. But instead of the searing heat they described, all I felt was a pleasant, gentle warmth, like a stone heated by the sun. It feels warm, I stated, genuinely bewildered. Warm. Alinda and Sarisa cried in unison, their voices incredulous. Doesn't it burn you, princess? No, I replied, still holding it. Just warm. They tried again, pressing their fingers to the glass, but both recoiled instantly. It's still hot, Sarisa insisted. We were still debating this strange phenomenon when a maid arrived to announce that the feast was ready. As we made our way through the castle corridors, a question burned within me. Maid, I asked, pointing to similar glowing spheres spaced along the walls, illuminating our path. What are these light balls? All around the castle. The maid smiled, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Those are light bulbs, princess, she explained. An invention from the College of Winterhold. They light castle halls. Instead of candles and torches. Light bulbs. An invention. My mind reeled. This was not just a prospering kingdom. It was a place of true innovation. We finally reached the Great Hall, and my jaw nearly dropped. It was utterly transformed. The usual smoky gloom of a feast hall was gone, replaced by a brilliant, consistent illumination. Hundreds of these light bulbs were affixed to the walls, casting a soft, even glow, and from the very center of the vaulted ceiling hung a single, magnificent bulb, far larger than the others, encased in an intricately designed metal fixture. The entire hall was bathed in a clear, bright light, making every face visible, every detail sharp. This was a different world. Lord Willis Manderley rose from his seat at the high table as we entered the great hall, his broad smile a beacon in the brightly lit space. Princess Rhaenyra, welcome. Please, take your seats. He gestured to the places reserved for us, near the high table but not directly beside him. I settled into the plush seat, Alinda and Sarisa on either side, marveling at the sheer, consistent brilliance of the hall. Ayara, food, Lord Manderley boomed, and almost instantly, servants moved with practiced efficiency, placing trenchers of steaming roast lamb, fresh-caught fish, and rich, dark bread before us. Is your room comfortable, princess? Lord Willis asked, his eyes twinkling. More than comfortable, Lord Manderley, I replied genuinely. And the city, it is truly magnificent. The roads are unlike anything I've ever seen, and the houses, so well built, even with glass in every window. And the castle, of course, is splendid. He chuckled, a rumbling sound. Ah, yes, the glass and the roads. Marks of progress, princess. And the lights. He gestured around the hall, encompassing the hundreds of glowing spheres. These are but a taste of what the College of Winterhold has brought us. Light bulbs, they call them. An invention that has utterly transformed our nights. My gaze drifted to the massive, intricately designed sphere hanging from the center of the ceiling. And that one? I asked, pointing. It's enormous. That, princess, Lord Willis said proudly, is a chandelier of light bulbs, the largest we have yet commissioned. It casts light over our entire feasting hall as if it were midday. No more smoky torches, no more flickering candles. Just pure, clean light. It is a testament to the ingenuity fostered in Asgard. The conversation flowed easily from there. We spoke of the Manderley trade routes, the abundance of fish in the Bay of Seals, and the surprising mildness of White Harbor's winter compared to the rest of the north. Lord Willis was a gracious host, his questions about King's Landing polite, never prying too deeply into the recent troubles. I found myself relaxing, despite the alien surroundings and the weight of my mission. After a feast that seemed to stretch for hours, replete with hearty northern fare and surprisingly sweet drinks, I finally retired to my chambers with Alinda and Cerisa. The light bulbs hummed faintly, casting a warm glow on the unfamiliar room. I still can't believe it, Alinda whispered, gazing at the glowing sphere. No wicks, no oil, just light. And the roads, Cerisa chimed in, and the glass in every window. It's like a different world, isn't it, princess? I nodded, peeling off my heavy gown. It is. My father spoke of their advancements, but to see them, it's quite another thing entirely. And that Lord Manderley, he seems kind. He certainly does, Alinda agreed. Though he is a Northman, for all his fine silks. They are different, I mused, remembering my father's words. But perhaps not in the ways we imagined. We spoke for a while longer, discussing the wonders of White Harbor and the daunting journey ahead to Winterhold. Eventually, the weariness of the long voyage and the rich food claimed us, and we drifted off to sleep under the steady, silent glow of the light bulb. The next morning, after a hearty breaking of the fast with Lord Willis, we began our preparations. The carriage, surprisingly comfortable and smooth, awaited us outside the new castle. Ahead lay the long journey to Winterfell, and beyond that, the unknown challenges and lessons of Winterhold College. The North, Asgard, was already proving to be far more than I had ever anticipated. 17 comments 0 vote. Rhaenyra 2. Our farewells to Lord Willis Manderley were brief but warm. He stood at the castle entrance, a grand carriage already waiting. Princess, he said, indicating two sturdy Northmen in Manderley colors, these men will guide you on the first leg of your journey. Thank you, Lord Manderley, I replied, genuinely grateful for his hospitality. For everything. The carriage lurched forward. We traveled for perhaps 20 minutes, the landscape outside transforming from city to rolling hills, when the Manderley guard leading our escort raised a hand. Our carriage, and the accompanying 50 royal guards on horseback, came to a halt. Princess, the guard called, dismounting, we must disembark here. From this point, we travel by train. My brow furrowed. Walk, what do you mean by that? And, a train. The guard, a young man with a clear, steady gaze, seemed unfazed by my confusion. A train, princess, he explained, gesturing towards a long, low building a short distance away. It is a metal carriage, used for swift travel across the lands. Alinda and Cerisa exchanged bewildered glances. A metal carriage, used for travel. It sounded like something out of a child's fanciful tale. Then Cerisa gasped softly. There were rumors, she whispered, her eyes wide. Tales from when Queen Alysanne visited the North decades ago. They said she traveled on something like this, but no one in the South truly believed it. After the war, North closed its borders to the outside world, and no new information ever reached us. I nodded, the pieces of this strange, advanced puzzle slowly beginning to fit. We stepped out of the carriage, my Kingsguards looking just as perplexed as my ladies. The Manderley guards led us to the building, a long, low structure of stone and glass. As we approached, a low, rhythmic hiss filled the air. Inside, the building opened onto what looked like a vast, covered platform. Along a set of shining metal rails sat an enormous, gleaming metal carriage, truly like a long, dark snake. It was made of polished steel, with rows of large, square windows, and a strange hum emanated from it. This is the train, princess, the guard said, gesturing to an open door on the side of the metal serpent. Please, step inside. Hesitantly, we climbed the steps. The interior was unlike any carriage I had ever seen. Instead of facing each other in a small, enclosed space, there were rows of comfortable, padded seats, all facing forward. The floor was covered in a soft, thick rug, and the windows were remarkably large, offering wide views of the outside. The air inside was warm, almost unnaturally so, with no visible fire or brazier. By the seven hells, Alinda breathed, running a hand over the smooth, cool metal of the wall. It's so spacious. Cerisa, meanwhile, was peering out the window at the platform, her mouth slightly agape. And it's all metal. How does it move? What pulls it? I looked around, my mind reeling. The air inside was warm, the strange, rhythmic rumble a constant, low thrum. It was spacious, far more so than any carriage. No horses, no mud, no jolting over uneven ground. This was a completely different mode of travel, a testament to the sheer ingenuity that thrived in this independent kingdom. The North truly was a land of wonders. The great metal snake shuddered, a deep rumble vibrating through the floor beneath our feet. Then, with a gentle lurch that pressed us back into our plush seats, it began to move. Slowly at first, the platform outside glided past the vast windows, then gathering speed, the rhythmic clatter of metal on metal became a hypnotic rhythm. The world outside transformed into a blur of green and gray, the smooth, paved landscape a testament to the North's meticulous engineering. Gods above, Alinda breathed, her face pressed to the glass, we're flying. It's not flying, Alinda, it's going very fast, Cerisa corrected, though her own eyes were wide with awe. Faster than any horse I've ever ridden. I, too, found myself captivated by the view. The immense windows offered an unparalleled panorama of the northern landscape, unmarred by the jarring bumps and jolts of a typical carriage. The guard, a quiet, solid man whose name I learned was Joran, stood respectfully by the door, observing our reactions with a faint, knowing smile. Joran, I began, unable to contain my curiosity, this train. How does it work? What powers it? Joran turned to me. It runs on steam, princess. Water is heated to great temperatures, creating steam under immense pressure. That steam pushes pistons, which in turn move the wheels. Steam, coal. It sounded so simple, yet the scale of the contraption, the speed at which it devoured the landscape, defied all common sense. And these metal rods on the ground? I asked, gesturing to the perfectly laid metal lines stretching endlessly before us, shimmering in the pale northern sun. They are called rails, princess, Joran explained patiently. Made of hardened steel, forged in our own foundries. Laid straight and true by our masons and engineers from the College of Winterhold. They ensure a smooth, swift passage across our lands. Smooth it certainly was. The ride was incredibly gentle, allowing us to converse without shouting, to drink our tea without spilling. This was not merely faster, it was fundamentally better. Are there many of these trains? Alinda inquired. Aye, my lady, Joran confirmed. There are several lines now. From White Harbor, they stretch to Winterfell, to Torrhen Square, even a branch reaching as far west as Sea Dragon Point and south to Moat Cailin. They carry goods, soldiers, and people. It is how our kingdom remains connected, how our trade thrives, and how our garrisons can be reinforced swiftly. And the roads, I pressed, remembering my earlier observation. Are they all like those in White Harbor? Most of the major routes, princess, Joran said with a touch of pride. Especially the ones connecting our towns and cities. They are concrete, mixed with rock and sand, laid by our masons. They drain well, resist the frost, and make travel efficient for wagons, carriages, and patrols alike. It's astounding, I admitted, leaning back. The north is a vast land, princess, Joran replied simply. And a harsh one in winter. Good roads and swift travel are not merely conveniences, they are necessities for a stronger kingdom. As the hours passed, the landscape outside the window transformed. The rolling farmlands gave way to denser forests, their trees tall and ancient, laden with the white mantle of winter. Occasionally, we'd glimpse a fortified village, or a sturdy stone keep, their chimneys smoking, their glass windows glinting. Each seemed cleaner, more organized than the villages I was used to in the Crownlands. Are all the towns and villages governed by these non-hereditary mayors? Cerisa asked, curious. Aye, my lady, Joran confirmed. It has been so for nearly 20 years. They are chosen by the townsfolk for their wisdom and ability to manage, not by blood. It ensures competence, and gives the common folk a voice in their own affairs. It has done much for local prosperity. But they are to answer to liege lord. And the guilds? I asked, recalling my father's conversation. Are they truly as organized as Lord Manderley suggested? More so, princess, Joran said with a rare smile. The blacksmiths' guild ensures every smith is skilled and honest. The farmers' guild helps share knowledge of new methods and crops. The merchants' guild sets fair prices and organizes trade convoys, ensuring safe passage for goods. It brings order, quality, and prosperity. It is another way we ensure our people are cared for, and their work is valued. I pondered this. A system where common folk had a say, where trade was regulated for fairness, not just profit, where expertise was valued over lineage. It was a stark contrast to the South, where the desires of a few great lords often superseded the needs of the many, and where the word of a lord was law, regardless of his wisdom. The North, Asgard, was building something fundamentally different. The train journey, a blur of speed and revelation, finally began to slow. The forests gave way to a landscape of rolling hills, and in the distance, a massive, ancient fortress began to dominate the horizon. Even from afar, its sheer scale was humbling. Winterfell, princess, Joran announced, pointing. The train glided into a colossal station, even larger and more impressive than the one in White Harbor. It was built of the same dark stone, but here, the feeling was ancient, formidable. The air was colder, crisper, carrying the faintest scent of ice and old stone. We disembarked onto another wide platform, where a smaller, open carriage awaited us. As we stepped out of the train, I found myself gazing at the city that had grown around the ancient Stark castle. It wasn't just a castle town, it was a sprawling, planned metropolis. Wide, well-lit thoroughfares stretched out from the station, lined with multi-storied stone buildings. Smoke plumed from countless chimneys, and the soft glow of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of light bulbs already dotted the twilight, illuminating the burgeoning city. The architecture was solid, practical, yet imbued with a stern beauty. Everything spoke of purpose, of permanence, of a people who had built for centuries. The carriage began its smooth journey towards the towering walls of Winterfell Castle, which now seemed to be the heart of a truly grand city. The castle itself was immense, its ancient walls standing as silent sentinels over the bustling life around it. I noticed barracks, training grounds, and what looked like large public buildings, all meticulously built. There were no hovels, no squalid slums, even the outer buildings of Winter City seemed well maintained and prosperous. "This is Winter City, Princess," Torrhen said, his voice imbued with a quiet pride. "The capital of Asgard. And there, at its heart, is Winterfell, the seat of the king in the north." My mind reeled. From the moment I had stepped onto their paved roads in White Harbor, to the astonishing speed of the train, to this magnificent, thriving city carved out of the heart of the north, every expectation I had held had been shattered. This was not merely an independent kingdom, it was a powerful, innovative, and rapidly advancing civilization. My father had sent me to learn governance, but I was beginning to suspect I had been sent to witness a future he could barely imagine. And at its core lay Winterfell, no longer just a castle, but the heart of an enduring, formidable new realm. My education had truly begun. The carriage halted before the massive, ancient gates of Winterfell Castle, now truly the heart of Winter City. Guards, clad in dark, practical armor emblazoned with the direwolf, stood at attention, their faces stern but not unwelcoming. As the gates slowly swung open, revealing the inner courtyard, a small welcoming party stepped forward. At the forefront stood a man whose face, though younger, bore the unmistakable lineage of the Starks. This was Antares Stark, Crown Prince of Asgard, King Arthur's eldest son and heir. He was tall, lean, and carried himself with a quiet authority, his gray eyes keen and intelligent. Beside him stood a woman of striking beauty, her dark hair contrasting with fair skin, suggesting the hardy mountain clans. This was Astrid Stark née Flint, his wife. As I disembarked, followed by Alinda, Cerisa, and the Kingsguard, Antares stepped forward. He bowed deeply, a gesture both respectful and confident, not merely formal. Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Antares's voice was calm, yet carried a certain depth, like the rumble of distant thunder. "Welcome to Winterfell. Welcome to Asgard. My father, King Arthur, bids me extend his warmest greetings and hopes your journey was well." "Thank you, Prince Antares," I replied, curtsying. "The journey, and indeed your lands, have been enlightening." Just as Lord Manderley had done, Antares offered the ritual of bread and salt, a simple gesture of guest right. I accepted, partaking of the coarse bread and sharp salt, sealing the ancient bond of hospitality. "May your stay be blessed with peace and knowledge," Antares said, a faint, genuine smile touching his lips. Astrid, his wife, stepped forward then, her gaze warm. "We are honored to have you, Princess. Winterfell is your home for as long as you choose to grace us with your presence." She was elegant in her simple, practical northern attire, her composure radiating a quiet strength. "This is my wife, Astrid Stark née Flint," Antares introduced to me and my companions, laying a hand gently on her arm. Then I introduced my companions. "These are my companions Lady Alinda Massey and Lady Cerisa Blackwood, and our Kingsguard, Esser Auric and Esser Eric Cargill." Astrid offered a small nod to Alinda and Cerisa, then turned her attention back to me. "The masters at the college are eagerly awaiting your arrival, Princess. But for tonight, you must be weary. Our maid will show you to your quarters within the castle." She then turned to a young maid who had been waiting patiently nearby. "Alara, if you would lead the princess and her ladies to their rooms, please. See to their every comfort." The maid curtsied deeply, then gestured with an open hand. "This way, Princess." As I followed Alara, Antares and Astrid remained, their quiet, steady presence a stark contrast to the boisterous, often volatile, personalities of King's Landing. I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of apprehension and anticipation. The North, Asgard, was clearly not just a land of harsh winters and hardened warriors. It was a place of profound advancement, unexpected comforts, and a quiet, formidable dignity that was unlike anything I had ever known. My true journey, the one of discovery and learning, was just beginning. 8 comments 0 vote. Rhaenyra 3. Alara, the maid, led us through what seemed like an endless maze of stone corridors, each one impeccably clean and surprisingly warm, thanks to the hidden heating systems I was beginning to realize permeated every northern building. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting the history of House Stark, ancient battles, and scenes of northern life, starkly different from the vibrant, often scandalous, depictions found in the south. Finally, she stopped before a heavy oak door, intricately carved with a wolf's head. "These are your chambers, princess," she announced, pushing the door open to reveal a suite of rooms more comfortable and private than many I'd occupied in the Red Keep. A roaring fireplace cast a welcoming glow, and the ever-present light bulbs glowed softly from the ceiling. There was a large sleeping chamber for myself, and adjoining rooms for Alinda and Cerisa. "Thank you, Alara," I said, genuinely appreciative. "You may take your leave. Just so you know, princess," Alara added before departing, "the College of Winterhold will open its classes in 3 days. There will be a welcome reception for new students the day before. If you require anything at all, please do not hesitate to call upon me." I nodded, and she curtsied before slipping out. Once the door closed, Alinda let out a long breath. 3 days. Barely enough time to recover from the journey, princess. Cerisa was already peering out the large, clear window. "It truly is remarkable, isn't it? This castle, this city, it's not what the songs tell us about the north." "No," I agreed, walking to the window myself. Below, the bustling winter city spread out, a testament to the advancements Lord Willis and Joran had spoken of. The precise grid of concrete roads, the uniform stone houses, the glowing streetlights already coming to life as twilight deepened. "It's organized, efficient, and clean." Alinda sank onto a plush armchair by the fire. "And warm. I dare say, my lady, I might not mind the winter as much if all of Asgard is like this. But a college," Cerisa mused, "for future lords and ladies. It's so strange. What will they teach us? How to herd sheep?" She giggled, but she was nervous. I turned from the window. "Father said it was to learn statecraft, war strategies, the duties of governance. And to understand this, Asgard, better." I thought of the light bulbs, the concrete roads, the train. They clearly had much to teach us. "And King Arthur's granddaughter, she's meant to be starting her studies there too, isn't she?" "That's what the whispers in King's Landing said," Alinda confirmed. "Princess Mordred, I believe her name is. The same age as you, princess." "Mordred Stark," I repeated, tasting the name. The great-granddaughter of the king who had defeated my family. A strange prospect for a schoolmate. "I still don't like the idea of no guards inside the college," Cerisa fretted. "Even if the Starks gave an oath." "My father seemed to believe it, fiercely," I reminded her. "He said we'd be safe here." A part of me still doubted, but the evidence of the North's meticulous order and competence was mounting. We spent the evening settling into our rooms, marveling at the running water in the washbasins and the constant warmth from the hearth, without the need for endless stoking. We spoke of the Manderleys, of Prince Antares and his quiet, formidable presence. And, of course, of the looming prospect of Winterhold College. 3 days. 3 days until my true education in Asgard began. I felt a knot of anxiety, but also a growing spark of curiosity. What else would this astonishing kingdom reveal? Having refreshed ourselves, Alinda, Cerisa, and I were dressing for dinner when Alara, the maid, returned. "Princess," she announced, "the Stark family awaits your presence in the dining hall." A nervous flutter stirred in my stomach. Dinner with the reigning king in the north and his entire family, a far more intimate setting than the grand, public feast at White Harbor. We made our way through the now familiar corridors, the light bulbs casting a soft, steady glow on the tapestries depicting fierce direwolves and ancient weirwoods. As we entered the great hall, the warmth of the fire and the subtle scent of roasting game enveloped us. The hall, though smaller than the one in White Harbor, was still grand, well lit by the northern inventions. My eyes were immediately drawn to the high table. Seated in the main chair, a figure of quiet authority, was King Arthur Stark. To his right sat Prince Antares Stark, his stern but kind face illuminated by the flickering firelight, and beside him, his wife, Astrid Flint, her strong features softened by a gentle smile. To King Arthur's left, a younger man, clearly Antares' son, sat with a serious demeanor. This must be Rickard Stark, the heir to Antares. Beside him, a slightly younger boy, perhaps his brother, Bernard Stark. And then, my gaze settled on the girl seated beside Astrid Stark, her eyes bright and observant as they met mine. This was Mordred Stark, the granddaughter of the king. King Arthur called respectfully as we approached. "Princess Rhaenyra," he said, his voice deep and welcoming, "and your ladies. Welcome. Please, take your seats." He gestured to the chairs laid out for us near the high table, but still at a respectful distance from the immediate family. We settled in, and a comfortable silence fell as servants began to bring forth platters of food. Are your chambers comfortable, Princess? King Arthur inquired, his gray eyes assessing. Exceedingly so, Your Grace, I replied, a genuine smile touching my lips. The castle is magnificent, and the warmth is most welcome after the long journey. Our aim is always to provide comfort to our guests, Prince Antares added. Especially those who travel so far. Mordred, who had been watching me intently with an almost challenging curiosity, gave a brisk nod. She seemed far more interested in the conversation than the usual simpering girls of court. Bernard, on the other hand, seemed more interested in the roasted boar being placed before him. The initial formality gradually softened into small talk about our journey, the wonders of White Harbor, and the crisp northern air. Despite the solemnity that sometimes clung to the Starks, there was an underlying current of genuine warmth and an almost tangible sense of family unity at their table. It was a different kind of court than King's Landing, less glittering, perhaps, but undeniably grounded and real. The next morning, the air in Winterfell was crisp and invigorating. After a hearty breaking of the fast with the Stark family, a meal less about delicate pastries and more about robust meats and dark, wholesome bread, King Arthur Stark turned to his granddaughter, Mordred. Mordred, he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority I was beginning to associate with the Starks, I trust you remember your duties. Princess Rhaenyra and her ladies are our guests. I would like you to show them around Winterfell and then Wintercity. They are eager to tour the places. Mordred, who had been listening intently, pushed back her chair with a confident scrape. Of course, grandfather, she replied, her voice clear and without a hint of shyness. She looked at me, a direct, assessing gaze in her gray eyes. Are you ready, princess? As I'll ever be, I answered, intrigued by her forthright manner. With Alinda and Sarisa trailing slightly behind, we set out with Mordred as our guide. She moved with an easy, unburdened gait, her practical attire and sturdy boots clearly suited for traversing the castle's vastness. She didn't offer flowery descriptions, but rather concise, factual information, pointing out the ancient godswood, the bustling barracks, the great hall where we had dined, and the formidable kitchens. She answered our questions directly, her knowledge of the castle seemingly encyclopedic. The castle's heating system is quite ingenious, isn't it? She observed, gesturing to a cleverly concealed vent in a stone wall. Pipes carrying hot spring water from the deepest parts of the castle keep us warm, even in the harshest winters. These were present since times of old Starks, improved upon by the college's engineers. After exploring the castle, we ventured into Wintercity itself. The sheer scale and meticulous planning of the city continued to astound me. Mordred led us along the wide, paved roads, explaining the purpose of various public buildings, a massive granary, designed to feed the city through the longest winters, a sprawling public library, its windows glinting with glass, filled with Northmen of all stations, and grand guild halls, each bearing the emblem of its respective trade. This is the blacksmith's guild, Mordred explained, gesturing to a large, smoke-wreathed building from which the clang of hammers echoed. They not only train all the smiths in the city but also contribute to the castle's defenses, forging the steel for our soldiers. She spoke with a quiet pride that was infectious. As we walked, Mordred began to turn her questions to me. What is King's Landing truly like, princess? Is it as chaotic as the merchants who visit us describe? Many merchants speaks of a smell, like refuse and unwashed bodies. Her gaze was direct, unfiltered. I blinked, taken aback by her bluntness. It can be spirited, I admitted, choosing my words carefully. And yes, sometimes the smells are quite potent. The roads are not as clean or as wide as yours. And the castles, she pressed, are they also decorative? With gilded statues and painted ceilings? We hear that the Red Keep is quite garish. It is certainly grand, I said, trying to find a polite word for what I often found overwhelming. Filled with treasures and art from all over the world. But it can be rather dark inside, even with many torches. Not like the light bulbs here. Mordred nodded, absorbing my answers. And the small council meetings? Are they as dull as my grandfather sometimes complains his own are? She grinned, a flash of genuine, mischievous humor. I laughed, a genuine laugh that felt lighter than any I'd had in weeks. Sometimes, yes. More often, they are quite heated. My father struggles to get them to agree on anything. Lord Curlees always wants to fight, and Sir Otto always wants to talk. Ah, Sir Otto Hightower, Mordred mused, a knowing glint in her eyes that was unsettling for a girl her age. We hear he is quite the schemer. And your uncle, Prince Demon, is he truly as reckless as the bards sing? I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. My father's warning about not discussing southern politics echoed in my mind. Prince Demon has a fiery spirit, I chose carefully. And he is certainly a formidable warrior. Mordred seemed to accept this, her gaze sweeping over the organized bustle of Winter City. It is curious, she said, almost to herself, how much of the South's news revolves around squabbles and feasts. Why do you think that is, princess? Her question was simple, but I had no immediate answer. The North, Asgard, clearly valued order, progress, and pragmatic construction above all else. In the South, our concerns often seemed petty by comparison, overshadowed by power struggles and grievances. Mordred was frank, keen-eyed, and was making me see my own world with new eyes. This was going to be a very different education indeed. Our tour of Winter City continued, with Mordred providing a running commentary that was both informative and refreshingly candid. She led us to the bustling heart of the city, the Grand Market. Unlike the often chaotic, muddy markets of King's Landing, this one was paved, clean, and remarkably orderly, with specialized sections for different goods. The air here was alive with the sense of spices, fresh bread, and something uniquely savory. We should try some of the market fare, Mordred declared, her eyes gleaming with genuine enthusiasm. It's far better than anything they serve in the castle, sometimes. She led us to a stall where a cheerful, rosy-cheeked woman was handing out what looked like golden brown fritters, sizzling in oil. These are snow cakes, Mordred explained, holding one out to me. Made from ground nuts and winter fruits, fried crisp. Hesitantly, I took one. It was warm, sweet, and surprisingly delicious, a burst of flavor unlike any dessert I knew from the South. Alinda and Sarisa, initially wary, tried them and quickly devoured theirs with murmurs of approval. We also sampled wolf's teeth, savory skewers of spiced meat, and warm, frothy, moon milk, which had a delicate, sweet flavor. Do you have anything like this in King's Landing? Mordred asked between bites of a snow cake. Our markets are louder, I admitted, savoring the richness of the wolf's teeth. And often smell of fish and refuse. We have pasties, of course, and roasted meats, but nothing quite like this. These are truly unique. That's because many of our ingredients are unique to the North, Mordred said, and our guilds ensure the quality of all ingredients. My great-grandfather insisted on it. As midday approached, and with our stomachs pleasantly full, Mordred led us out of the city gates, to a large, open field on the outskirts of Winter City. My Kingsguard, Esser Arik and Esser Eric, exchanged glances, their hands never far from their swords. What could possibly be out here? Then I saw it, a colossal, brightly colored fabric sphere, tethered to a wicker basket by thick ropes. Flames roared from a burner beneath the opening of the sphere, slowly inflating it, making it sway gently in the crisp air. It was enormous, dwarfing the men who meticulously worked around it. What in the seven hells is that? Alinda whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. This, princess, Mordred announced, a hint of excitement in her voice, is a hot air balloon. Another invention from the College of Winterhold. We're going for a ride. But, how? I asked, intrigued. The fire heats the air inside the balloon, Mordred explained, pointing to the roaring burner. Hot air rises. It's quite simple, really, but it took our engineers many years to perfect the fabric and the burners. It's safe. I go up often. She looked at me, a challenge in her gaze. Unless you prefer to keep your feet on solid ground, princess. My pride, more than anything, pushed me forward. I am a Targaryen, I declared, wanting to experience flying without a dragon. I do not fear heights. We climbed into the sturdy wicker basket, which felt remarkably secure. The ground crew released the ropes, and with a gentle sway, we began to ascend. The world beneath us shrank with astonishing speed. The houses of Winter City became miniature blocks, the wide concrete roads thin ribbons. Gods above, Alinda gasped, clutching the basket's edge. Sarisa, surprisingly, looked more awestruck than fearful, her eyes gleaming. The silence up here was profound, broken only by the occasional roar of the burner and the gentle rush of the wind. Below us, Winter City spread out like a meticulously crafted map, its organized layout and thriving appearance more apparent than ever. I could clearly see the distinct outline of Winterfell Castle, the sprawling neighborhoods, the central market, and even the train tracks snaking away into the distance. From here, princess, Mordred said, her voice soft with reverence, you can see the full city. And beyond it, to the east, you can even glimpse Winterhold. She pointed to a cluster of impressive, built structures, which are far larger than I had imagined for a college. It's magnificent, I whispered, the words heartfelt. This was a perspective I had never imagined. It was utterly different from riding Syrax, the roar of dragon wings, the wind tearing at my face. This was a gentle, almost meditative ascent, allowing for careful observation. Why is White Harbor the largest city, if Wintercity and Winterhold are so grand? Mordred turned to me, her practical nature coming to the fore. Well, if you combine the population and sheer size of Wintercity and Winterhold, Princess, they are larger than White Harbor. But my great-grandfather, King Theon Stark, said that Wintercity and Winterhold should remain distinct entities. White Harbor is our main port, our gateway to the world by sea, built for trade and commerce. Wintercity is the heart of our governance and our martial strength, and Winterhold is our center of knowledge. Each has its own purpose, its own identity, and it allows for more focused development. We continued to talk, the conversation flowing easily between us as we drifted over the northern landscape. She told me more about King Theon's vision, his emphasis on efficiency and long-term planning. She spoke of the importance of the guilds in every town, ensuring quality and standards across all crafts. She even touched on the concept of thermal energy capture, explaining how the heat from the hot springs beneath Winterfell was harnessed not just for warmth, but for other applications she couldn't quite articulate in simple terms. As the sun began its long, slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Mordred signaled to the crew below. We descended gently, touching down in the same field we had departed from. The carriage awaited, and the journey back to Winterfell was filled with a contented silence, our minds still reeling from the day's revelations. The North, Asgard, was not merely different, it was a testament to what a kingdom could achieve when freed from the petty squabbles of lords and the stifling weight of tradition. My education, I realized, had only just begun. The carriage deposited us at the inner courtyard of Winterfell, the evening air now carrying the sharp bite of true northern cold. My head was still light from the breathtaking flight, and my mind buzzed with all I had seen and learned. Wintercity and the hot air balloon were not just marvels, they were a profound challenge to everything I thought I knew about the world. That was incredible, Princess, Alinda breathed, her eyes still wide with wonder as we disembarked. Truly, Princess, Cerisa added, her usual timidity replaced by awe. I never thought I'd see the sky from so high, like a bird. It was certainly an experience, I agreed, a genuine smile still lingering on my face. My earlier apprehension about the North had been largely replaced by a sense of fascination. Mordred, who had been an excellent guide, gave a nod of satisfaction. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Princess. Winterfell is just as interesting, in its own way. We'll speak more tomorrow, perhaps. She gave a quick, almost military nod of farewell and strode off towards another part of the castle, no doubt eager to recount her day's adventure. We made our way towards our chambers, the familiar corridors offering a comforting sense of routine after the day's extraordinary events. Just as we reached our door, Alara, the maid, appeared from around a corner, her expression serious. Princess, she said, her voice soft but clear, King Regent Theon Stark requests a meeting with you. He is in his solar. My steps faltered. King Regent Theon Stark, the man who had defeated my family, the architect of Asgard's independence. I hadn't met him yet. To be summoned by him, alone, without the buffer of his family or my father's presence, it was an unexpected twist to the day. Now, I asked, a sliver of my old anxiety returning. Yes, Princess, Alara confirmed. He awaits you now. I exchanged a glance with Alinda and Cerisa. Their faces reflected my own surprise, perhaps a touch of concern. This was not part of the plan. But a royal summons, especially from such a figure, could not be refused. Very well, I said, composing myself. Lead the way, Alara. The exhilaration of the hot air balloon faded, replaced by a nervous anticipation. What could the old king, the wolf who walked away from the Iron Throne, possibly want with me? 9 comments 0 vote. Rhaenyra 4. Alara led me through another series of familiar corridors, her quiet steps echoing in the stone halls, until we reached a less familiar part of the castle. She stopped before a heavy, unadorned wooden door. She knocked once, a soft, respectful sound. Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Your Grace, Alara announced, her voice clear. Enter, a deep, resonant voice called from within. Alara pushed the door open, revealing a large, warm solar. It was less grand than the king's own chambers, more practical and lived in. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with tomes of varying sizes. Maps, remarkably detailed and modern, were rolled and stacked in corners. A large, sturdy desk dominated one side of the room, covered with parchments and carving tools. Seated by a roaring hearth, in a simple, comfortable chair, was Theon Stark. He looked even older, but his gray eyes, though weary, were still sharp, missing nothing. He gestured to a chair opposite him. Come, Princess, he said, his voice carrying the rasp of age but still strong. Sit. Alara, please pour the princess some winterberry juice. Alara moved silently, pouring a warm, steaming cup of the winterberry juice I had tasted in the market. She presented it to me, then, with a final curtsy, quietly slipped out, leaving me alone with the man who had humbled the Targaryen dynasty. The silence that fell was thick, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant murmur of the castle. It was an intimidating silence, filled with unspoken history. Theon Stark regarded me for a long moment, his gaze assessing, patient. It felt as though he was looking not just at me, but through me, weighing my very spirit. So, princess, he finally began, his voice soft, how fares Asgard in your eyes? Has Winter City met your expectations? Are your chambers comfortable? I took a slow sip of the drink, gathering my thoughts. Your Grace, I began, choosing my words carefully, Asgard has far exceeded any expectations I might have held. White Harbor is a city of remarkable prosperity, and Winter City, it is a marvel of planning and construction. The roads, the warmth of the castle, the light bulbs, I emphasized, a genuine note of awe entering my voice, and the train, they are all unlike anything I have ever witnessed in the South. He nodded slowly, a flicker of something akin to satisfaction in his eyes. And your chambers, he prompted, are they to your liking? We wish to ensure your comfort after such a long journey. They are more than comfortable, Your Grace, I assured him. Warm, private, and exceptionally well appointed. I am most grateful for your family's hospitality. Theon leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady upon me. Good. He paused, and then, his voice dropped slightly, becoming more direct. You have seen much today, princess. More than just our stone and steel, I imagine. Theon Stark's gray eyes, ancient and piercing, held my gaze. You have seen much today, princess. More than just our stone and steel, I imagine. I nodded, feeling a curious blend of awe and apprehension. Indeed, Your Grace, the advancements are astonishing. I confess, they challenge many of the notions I held about the North. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Good. That is precisely why the College of Winterhold was conceived. Not merely to teach sums and letters, but to foster innovation, to understand the world, and to prepare our people for the future. He paused, his gaze seeming to look beyond me, into a distant vision. North needed to be stronger, smarter, more self-sufficient. The college is the heart of that vision. It is where we forge not just scholars and healers, but engineers, strategists, and thinkers. It is where we build the minds that will build Asgard. He spoke with a quiet intensity, and I found myself utterly captivated, sensing the depth of his purpose. We talked for a while longer about the college's curriculum, its focus on practical knowledge, and how it differed from the Citadel's approach. Then, his expression shifted, becoming gravely serious. The casual comfort of our conversation evaporated. Princess, he began, his voice dropping slightly, we have allowed you to enter Winterhold because we believe it will help maintain a healthy and peaceful relationship between our kingdoms. We seek no conflict with the South. We paid our price for freedom, and we wish to live in peace. His eyes, however, held a stark warning. I hope you truly learn everything Winterhold teaches you and are prepared to rule when, in the future, you become queen. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. You are going to be the first queen to sit on the Iron Throne in a century. The lords, steeped in their traditions, will question your ability to rule. They will whisper, they will scheme, and they will always try to undermine you. If you were a boy, they wouldn't have questioned you. So now, you have to work twice as hard, be twice as cunning, and rule with twice the wisdom of any great king. Even then, many will not be satisfied. His words, blunt and unvarnished, struck a chord of truth within me. He saw the challenges that my own father, in his hopeful naivete, often overlooked. Here is my advice, he continued, his tone softening only slightly. Be wise. Make sure those you keep around you for counsel will give you good, honest advice when needed. Trust their wisdom until you are grown enough to fully trust your own. And even when you are, if they are truly wiser, you will continue to take their counsel. Then, a surprising warmth entered his eyes, and a faint smile touched his lips. My great-granddaughter, Mordred Stark, will be joining you in your studies at Winterhold. I hope you two become good friends. He chuckled softly. She is a hurricane, that one. Does as she pleases, and never truly shies from giving her opinion. So don't take it to heart if she says anything inappropriate. She means no malice, simply speaks her mind. He rose, indicating our time was at an end. The feast will likely start in an hour. Go and get ready for it, princess. I trust you will enjoy the northern fare once more. I rose, curtsied, and made my way out of his solar, my mind reeling. Theon Stark, the quiet, formidable wolf who walked away, had seen through me, seen through my father, and seen the treacherous path ahead of me. His words were a blend of wisdom and chilling prophecy. Alinda and Sarisa were waiting for me outside the solar, their faces etched with curiosity. I gave them a brief, sanitized version of the conversation, omitting the more foreboding parts. We then prepared for the evening feast, which, though as grand and warm as the last, I found myself contemplating the meaning of hurricane, and the weight of the crown rather than the taste of the roasted boar. That night, my second day in Winterfell ended. I lay in the warmth of my bed, the constant glow of the light bulb a familiar comfort, and wondered what other truths Asgard held, and what kind of ruler I would become under its unforgiving, yet strangely honest, tutelage. 6 comments 0 vote. Rhaenyra 5. The crisp morning light filtered through the large windows of the train carriage as it sped through the northern landscape. Today was the day. After a final breaking of the fast with the Starks, a meal less formal than dinner, but still substantial, Rhaenyra, Mordred, Alinda, and Sarisa found themselves once again on the metal serpent, hurtling towards Winterhold. Mordred, surprisingly, seemed to relish the journey, leaning against the window and pointing out landmarks. That's the White Knife, she'd say, indicating a rushing river, our main source of fresh water for Wintercity. And over there. Alinda and Sarisa, still somewhat wide-eyed by the speed and comfort of the train, mostly listened, exchanging fascinated glances. My own thoughts were a whirlwind. Theon Stark's words still echoed in my mind, twice as hard, twice as cunning, twice the wisdom. And Mordred, the hurricane, sitting beside me, seemed to embody the very spirit of this new, formidable north. So, what's Winterhold really like? I finally asked Mordred, breaking a lull in the conversation. Beyond what my father was told, or what we've seen from the sky. Mordred turned, her gray eyes alight. It's not like a castle, princess. It's a collection of buildings, all dedicated to learning and innovation. There are the great halls for lectures, of course, but then there are the workshops for engineers, the observatories for the stargazers, the botanical gardens where we learn about new crops and medicines. There's even a forge, where we learn about working with metals, and a library that's said to hold more scrolls than the Citadel. She spoke with an infectious enthusiasm, clearly proud of her Asgard's institution. Do all the students live there? Alinda inquired. Aye, Mordred confirmed. From the moment you're accepted, your quarters are assigned. We live and learn together. It fosters a sense of unity, of shared purpose. Plus, it's easier for the scholars and masters to oversee everything. The train continued its relentless journey, the world outside a blur of winter-clad forests and vast, silent plains. After what felt like a remarkably short time, the train began to slow, the rhythmic clatter easing into a gentle rumble. We're here, Mordred announced, rising. The train pulled into another station, smaller than Wintercity's, but just as meticulously constructed. As we stepped onto the platform, the air felt even crisper, infused with the scent of pine and something else, a subtle, almost academic smell, like old parchment and something faintly metallic. Before us stood a collection of impressive, utilitarian buildings, built of the same dark, polished stone as Wintercity. They were not ornate, but powerfully functional, designed for purpose rather than display. Far in the distance, I could see the ancient weirwood grove that Theon Stark had mentioned, a dark, solemn presence amidst the newer structures. A group of figures stood waiting on the platform. They were clearly the scholars and masters of Winterhold College. At their head was an older woman, her face intelligent and kind, yet firm. This was likely the head of the college. The woman stepped forward, her gaze first settling on Mordred, a warm smile gracing her lips. Welcome, Princess Mordred, she said, her voice clear and precise. We trust your journey was well. Mordred gave a respectful bow. It was, Dean, thank you. Then the woman turned her gaze to me, her expression shifting to one of respectful welcome. And welcome, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. I am Master Linda Ashwood, the Dean of Winterhold. We are honored by your presence. I curtsied, acknowledging her. Today, Dean Linda Ashwood continued, her gaze encompassing all new arrivals, we will be giving you an introduction to all the facilities here at Winterhold. You will see where you will study, where you will dine, and where you will grow. Following the introductions, we will assign your quarters. These will be your homes until your education is complete here at Winterhold. We expect dedication, diligence, and a keen mind from all our students. She turned, gesturing towards the entrance of the largest building. Now, if you would follow me, ladies. Your journey of true learning begins today. My heart quickened. This was it, the place where the North's secrets of advancement truly resided. This was where I was meant to become the queen my father desired, the queen Theon Stark believed I needed to be. The weight of expectation settled upon my shoulders, but for the first time, it was mingled with genuine excitement. Dean Linda Ashwood led us into the grand main hall of Winterhold College, a place of impressive proportions yet devoid of the gilded excess of the Red Keep. Instead, its grandeur stemmed from its sheer functionality and the quiet dignity of knowledge. Our first stop was the dining hall, a spacious chamber filled with long, sturdy tables. The air hummed with the quiet chatter of students and scholars, and the familiar glow of light bulbs illuminated every corner. The meal, though simple fare of hearty stew, fresh bread, and crisp vegetables, was warm and plentiful, a stark contrast to the sometimes meager offerings of the capital. After the meal, a tall, gaunt man with an intense gaze and a scholar's robe, whom Dean Ashwood introduced as Master Boren, head of logistics and facilities, took over our tour. He spoke with a precise, measured cadence, clearly proud of the institution. Welcome to Winterhold, princesses, and to all new students, Master Boren began. This college is designed to foster learning and innovation in every field. Our facilities are built for that purpose. He first led us to the central library, a towering edifice that seemed to hold endless rows of scrolls and books. Unlike the dusty, often neglected libraries of the South, this one was vibrant, filled with students poring over texts, and scribes meticulously copying new works. The silence was palpable, broken only by the rustle of parchment and the faint scratching of quills. Here, Master Boren explained, you will find the collected knowledge of the North, and indeed, much of what we have gathered from the wider world. It is a living library, constantly growing. Next, we were taken to the engineering workshops. The air here hummed with a different energy, the clang of metal, the hiss of steam, the whirring of intricate mechanisms. Students, some no older than myself, worked with focused intensity on complex contraptions. I saw curious devices that looked like small, intricate clocks, and others that seemed to harness power from thin air. This is where our engineers refine existing technologies and forge new ones, Master Boren said, gesturing to a massive, polished engine that gleamed under the light bulbs. From the light bulbs that illuminate our homes to the trains that traverse our lands, much begins here. We then visited the botanical gardens, an immense glass-domed structure that held a surprising array of plants, some familiar, others alien and vibrant even in the depths of winter. Here, scholars carefully tended to various flora, experimenting with new crops and studying the medicinal properties of plants. The air was warm and humid, a welcome respite from the northern chill. The study of life itself is crucial, Master Boren stated. Understanding our lands, our resources, and how to sustain our people in health and abundance. These are vital for a strong kingdom. Our tour continued through various lecture halls, vast chambers equipped with strange projection devices that could display diagrams on walls, far beyond the crude chalk drawings of King's Landing. We saw laboratories filled with bubbling flasks and glowing instruments, and observatories equipped with powerful telescopes that could apparently bring the very stars closer. And now, Master Boren announced as we approached a series of expansive, open-air fields, for those aspects of learning crucial to leadership and defense. He led us first to the training grounds. Here, young men and women, clad in practical leather and mail, sparred with wooden swords, practiced archery, and drilled in formation. Their movements were precise, their discipline evident. Unlike the individualized jousts of the South, this was practical, coordinated martial training. Every student, regardless of their intended profession, receives basic training in self-defense and tactical movement, Master Boren explained. It is fundamental to understanding discipline and the realities of conflict. Finally, we were brought to the war rooms. These were not dusty chambers filled with ancient maps, but sleek, modern spaces. One massive table in the center held a meticulously crafted, three-dimensional relief map of the entire Westeros, marked with tiny, colored flags and glowing indicators. Several students and masters were gathered around it, discussing troop movements and supply lines. Here, our strategists and future military leaders study past conflicts and plan for future contingencies, Master Boren said. We use sophisticated mapping techniques and simulations to understand the movement of armies, the logistics of supply, and the most effective defensive and offensive maneuvers. A true leader must understand the battlefield, even if they never step upon it themselves. The tour concluded back in the main hall. Master Boren clapped his hands once, drawing our attention. Your quarters have been assigned, and your luggage has already been sent to your respective rooms, he announced. You will find your schedules for the next 3 days, leading up to the commencement of classes, in your rooms. Rest well, for tomorrow, your true studies begin. He gave a polite nod, and then the students began to disperse. I exchanged a glance with Alinda and Sarisa. Our minds were reeling from the sheer scale and ingenuity of Winterhold. This was not merely a school, it was a forge for a new kind of kingdom. My education here, I realized with a mix of trepidation and burgeoning excitement, was going to be unlike anything I could have ever imagined. The next 3 days at Winterhold College were a blur of new experiences. Our quarters were comfortable and efficient, just as promised, and our luggage had indeed arrived, neatly placed. Each morning, after a wholesome breakfast in the bustling dining hall, we consulted our personalized schedules, printed on crisp, durable paper, another small marvel of Northern engineering. The first few lessons were in what the masters called foundations of governance. This involved long hours in lecture halls, listening to masters expound on economic principles, legal precedents, and the history of Asgard's political development. The concept of shared resources and managed distribution ensures stability during lean years, Master Thane, a severe but brilliant woman with spectacles, explained, gesturing to complex diagrams projected onto the wall. Unlike systems reliant solely on individual lordly stores, our integrated granaries and trade networks prevent localized famine and price gouging. I found myself absorbing it all with a diligence born of both duty and genuine curiosity. I took copious notes, my quill scratching across the paper, trying to commit every detail to memory. Alinda, ever the diligent companion, mirrored my efforts, occasionally whispering a question or clarification. Cerisa, while initially overwhelmed, was also surprisingly attentive, her brow furrowed in concentration. Mordred, however, was a different story. During the lectures, she would sit beside me, initially attentive, but within minutes, her restless energy would become palpable. Her foot would tap a silent rhythm against the floor, her fingers would drum against the table, or she would doodle intricate, wolf-like patterns in the margins of her notes. When Master Thane launched into a lengthy explanation of tax redistribution, Mordred finally groaned softly beside me. "Is this truly necessary?" she whispered, nudging my arm. "When will we get to the real lessons? The ones where we actually do something?" I stifled a sigh. "This is real, Mordred. Understanding how a kingdom funds itself, how resources are allocated, it's crucial for a ruler." "But it's so dry," she muttered, crossing her arms. "I'd rather be sparring than listening to sums." Her true engagement only sparked when the lessons shifted from theoretical to practical. In our tactical strategy class, instead of merely discussing historical battles, Master Brennus laid out vast, detailed sand tables. "Princess Mordred," he commanded, "you are leading the combined forces of House Karstark and House Umber. The enemy has seized the crossing at the last hearth. Outline your strategy to retake it, considering terrain, supply lines, and potential enemy reinforcements." Here, Mordred came alive. She immediately crouched over the sand table, her fingers tracing lines in the sand, her mind clearly visualizing the terrain. "We send a diversionary force along the river, feigning a direct assault," she began, her voice confident. "Meanwhile, a smaller, highly mobile force, perhaps mounted archers, circles through the Kingswood to hit their flank. The main body pushes through the central pass, forcing them into a pincer." Her strategic thinking was sharp, intuitive. I, coming from a world of grand pronouncements and knightly charges, found myself impressed, and slightly humbled. My own strategies were more focused on dragonfire and numerical superiority. "A sound plan, Mordred," Master Brennus commended. "But consider the enemy's potential reaction to the flanking maneuver. How do you prevent them from collapsing their center and crushing your river force?" "We feign a retreat with the river force," Mordred quickly countered, drawing them out, while the flankers are ready to strike. Even in the Science of Materials class, where we learned about the properties of various metals and composites, Mordred's attention would wander during the lectures, only to snap back when Master Lyra would demonstrate how to forge a particular alloy, or how to test its tensile strength. "This is much better," Mordred declared, eyes alight, as Master Lyra heated a bar of steel until it glowed cherry red. "Knowing why the steel holds is good, but knowing how to make it hold is essential." Alinda and Cerisa, while less overtly bored than Mordred during the lectures, still found their greatest interest sparked by the practical demonstrations. Alinda was particularly fascinated by the medical lessons, where we learned about northern herbal remedies and basic wound care, far more advanced than anything commonly taught to southern ladies. Cerisa, to my surprise, showed a knack for understanding simple mechanics, always eager to examine the inner workings of the college's various devices. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the polished stone floors, we finally concluded our day's classes. My mind was buzzing, a fascinating blend of theoretical knowledge and hands-on observation. Mordred, looking far more energized than she had that morning, walked beside me, whistling a jaunty northern tune. "So, Princess," she asked, nudging me playfully, "did any of it finally bore you senseless, or do you think you can stomach another day of understanding the allocation of resources?" I smirked. "It was illuminating, Mordred. Though I admit, your enthusiasm for practical applications is considerable." She grinned. "What's the point of learning if you can't actually do anything with it?" It was a question I had never truly considered in King's Landing. There, knowledge often felt like a decoration, a means to win arguments or impress. Here, it was clearly a tool, a means to build. And I was beginning to understand that difference.